Thank you always.
This is about Emily, who receives a homemade lunchbox and briskly heads to work. I noticed she forgot something and hurried after her. In a park, I witnessed a shocking scene. Unforgivable. How could they deceive us like this? I decided to show them. Vowing revenge, I set a plan against her. My name is Barbara Smith. I'm a 50-year-old housewife. I work as a massage therapist, mainly focusing on full-body massages, and run a home salon. Since my first husband passed away early, I've been living alone. Then I remarried my current husband, Robert. He first came as a client and became a regular.
Barbara, your massages make my head and shoulders feel incredibly light. I used to suffer from migraines, but they stopped since I started coming here. I'm truly grateful,
Robert said with a smile. I remember being very happy to see his smiling face. Once he got hooked, he started visiting at least once a week. However, my salon isn't cheap. Other clients, mostly office workers, come maybe twice a month, at most weekly. But Robert would come 2 or 3 times a week in busy months. He didn't seem to cut corners in his life, showing financial comfort. What does he do for a living? I gradually became interested in his job, which led me to approach him. I learned his true identity about 3 months after we met. Robert revealed that he runs multiple companies and is divorced.
Work kept me busy, and I couldn't spend much time with my child in the early years. Now, she works in my company and supports me.
A successful businessman, Robert seldom came home. He regretted not being more involved in parenting.
I can't forgive her for using our child to marry me for my wealth,
he confided, his expression twisted with pain. His ex-wife reportedly used their child to marry Robert for his wealth. She lied about using contraception to force him into marriage. Once married, she left all childcare and housework to nannies and partied every night. Tired of her, he divorced and now lives with his daughter. His daughter's name is Emily. She's 25 and works as an office worker in Robert's company. As Robert and I became closer, I often dined with Emily. Her cheerful and bright personality always comforted me, and she loved the food I cooked.
Barbara, your cooking is really delicious. I love it.
Over time, Emily started saying such things to me. Encouraged by her words, I started improving my cooking skills. Soon after, my relationship with Robert deepened, and we began discussing marriage. Surprisingly, it was Emily who first brought up the idea of our marriage.
Aren't you and Dad gonna get married? I'd be so happy if you became my stepmom.
Robert and I hadn't ruled out marriage, but I was worried Emily still had scars from her mom's actions. Knowing their painful past, I couldn't bring myself to propose to Robert. I thought I'd be happy just as we were, without marriage. But then Emily said that. And I was overwhelmed with happiness. I was so moved I cried right there, and Emily, seeing this, gave me a troubled smile and hugged me. What we didn't notice was the sly smile she hid at that moment. With Emily's encouragement, Robert and I decided to get married. After marrying Robert, I realized his work was busier than I thought. He was often away more than half the week. His visits to our home salon were his only time at home. So, I spent most weeks just with Emily. Now that we were a family, I was determined to build a relationship with her, even when Robert wasn't around. But Emily was busy with work and her life, rarely at home. It's kinda lonely. The housemaids lessened the daytime loneliness. But nights were different. They usually left by 5 p.m., leaving me alone in our huge house. Rarely did Emily or Robert join me for dinner.
Emily has felt lonely because of me, so I'm happy you, Barbara, came to our home,
Robert often said before we got married. He was worried about leaving Emily alone at night. Our condo has a concierge, so safety wasn't a big concern. But still, it's natural to worry about leaving a young woman alone at home. Determined not to let her feel lonely again, I married Robert, but Emily is an adult now. She's successfully navigating life as a working professional. Lost in these thoughts while eating, I heard the front door open.
I'm home.
When I went to check, I saw Emily, looking exhausted, returning home.
Welcome back. You're late. Tough day at work? Your bath is ready. Thanks always. I've been busy with a project. If it goes well, I might get a promotion.
Emily, tired, entered the living room and reached for the dinner I prepared.
Just a little snack. So delicious. I'm lucky to have such a warm meal when I come home.
She praised my cooking. I always wanted to cook, no matter how busy, asking the housemaids to let me do it. It was the only way I could connect with Emily.
I'll leave your lunchbox in the kitchen. Today's was great. My colleagues are always envious.
Her face always comforted me, making me think she was genuinely happy, unaware of the hidden ugly emotions beneath her smile.
The bath's ready. You must be tired, take your time.
I spoke gently to Emily, who seemed about to doze off on the sofa after dinner. She sleepily responded and staggered towards the bathroom. Over an hour passed since she started her bath. Worried she might have fallen asleep in the tub, I decided to check on her. Entering the changing room and about to call out to Emily in the bathroom, my eyes landed on her cell phone lying on the washing machine. It was a text. I involuntarily read the message and quickly covered my mouth.
Thanks for always coming to see me. Looking forward to the surprise for my birthday next month, Ace Emily. Can't wait.
Taking advantage of Emily not replying, I unintentionally read the text aloud and quickly covered my mouth. However, I felt uneasy about what I had just read. It seemed like a thank you text from a boyfriend or someone she's dating. But the way the birthday and surprise were mentioned seemed off. Expecting a surprise, isn't that pressure for a loved one?
Ace?
And his name is not a normal name. It sounded like a pseudonym used by someone in the night scene. A bad feeling crossed my mind as I wondered what to do.
Oops. I fell asleep in the bath.
I heard Emily wake up and hurry out of the tub. I quickly turned to the sink, pretending to look for something.
Huh? Barbara, what's up? Oh, sorry for disturbing you in the bath. Looks like we're out of hand soap, so I came to get a refill.
Although I tried to act calm, my heart was pounding, wondering if Emily noticed I had seen the text. She didn't seem suspicious and just smiled, saying, I see. If that text was indeed from someone in the nightlife business, how was she affording it? Emily works in an administrative role, earning about $3,500 a month. Therefore, it seemed unlikely that she had enough money to frequently visit nightclubs to lavish on men. Yet, the text from that man earlier distinctly mentioned Ace. It seemed unlikely she could afford such expenses on her salary. Around this time, an incident occurred. Robert, who usually couldn't come home often, started returning home 3 times a week.
The workload eased a bit, but actually, there's been an embezzlement issue at my company.
Shocking, but true. There was an embezzlement scandal at the company where Emily worked. The perpetrator hadn't been identified, but the stolen amount was in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Rumor had it, someone in accounting was responsible. This news made me more anxious about Emily. Since Robert began coming home more, Emily also spent more time at home.
Don't overwork yourself, Dad. The most important thing is that the culprit gets caught.
Emily is seen as the top candidate for promotion at the company, Robert had told me.
Despite making her feel lonely, she's grown up to be such an accomplished young woman. I'm proud of her as a parent.
The thought that such a well-raised daughter could be embezzling company funds and visiting nightclubs, that's unthinkable. There must be some mistake. I'm probably just overthinking it. Yet, the words Ace from that man's email linger in my mind and won't go away. With the amount of embezzlement in the hundreds of thousands, it's possible to lavish plenty on a man and indeed become an ace. But would someone really send such a text to a significant other? Should I talk to Robert about this? My mind is a mess, and several days have passed. On my day off, while I was making Emily's lunch, our housemaid, who has been with us for nearly 20 years and is trusted by both Emily and Robert, noticed my worried look and approached me.
Ma'am, are you okay? You look pale. I can take over the preparations for today if you need.
This woman has been our housemaid for nearly 20 years and is trusted by both Emily and Robert. She's quick-witted, calm, and makes swift judgments, truly a sharp-minded person. She might have some advice for me. After Emily and Robert had left, I approached her to discuss my concerns. She willingly agreed, and after they had gone, we sat in the living room, and I shared the events of the past few days and my thoughts with her.
Actually, I too thought Miss Emily's behavior was odd.
She started suspecting something was amiss about 6 months ago. Emily dislikes alcohol and smoking, while Robert is fond of both. However, due to Emily's strong aversion, Robert stopped smoking at home and has been living a smoke-free lifestyle at home for about 10 years.
But, about 6 months ago, I occasionally started noticing the smell of smoke on Miss Emily's clothes.
Of course, there were guesses like work-related socializing or a boyfriend who smokes, so it didn't seem odd at first. But then, one night, after finishing her work, the housemaid was walking through a bar district, having been invited out by a friend. They decided to treat themselves at a slightly expensive sushi restaurant.
That's when I saw her. Miss Emily entered the restaurant, closely linked arm-in-arm with a flashy, flamboyant man.
The restaurant was high-end, often refusing first-time visitors. Seeing such a couple, who looked like the epitome of a foolish pair, the housemaid was taken aback.
The man next to her was dressed in flashy designer clothes, a suit, but didn't seem like someone with an ordinary job. But it's not my place to comment on whom Miss Emily chooses to date.
After that, the two disappeared into the bar district. The housemaid and I agreed that the man from the email might have been the same man she saw that night, leading us to decide to discuss it with Robert. That night, Emily had informed us she would be late due to overtime and dinner with friends. Robert had returned home, providing a perfect opportunity to talk. I shared with him about the email, the conversation with the housemaid, and the embezzlement issue. He turned pale and was visibly shaken.
No, it can't be. Emily?
Yet, he couldn't completely deny it, as there were rumors at her workplace.
There's talk among many employees that Emily might be involved romantically with the executive director.
Apparently, there were dark rumors surrounding the executive director, who had recently been displaying signs of newfound wealth, raising suspicions among colleagues.
He's involved in accounting. It's the perfect position for someone to embezzle, Robert noted.
Despite it being about his daughter, Robert was able to consider the situation calmly, which I found remarkable. If I had been hit with such news, it would have taken me a long time to believe it. But Robert was likely using various means to gather evidence to deny it, not wanting to believe it himself. However, it often happens that the more you search for evidence, the more you find confirming your fears. My conversation with him seemed to shift his doubts to conviction.
Please don't mention this to Emily. It involves the company too. I'll set up a committee to gather evidence of the executive director's embezzlement and consider involving the police. Understood,
I replied, though Robert's face was pale despite his attempt to remain composed. He mentioned that the executive director was nearing retirement age. It's nauseating to imagine our daughter in a relationship with someone much older, practically grandfather-aged. I left the company matters to Robert, but the issue at hand was Emily, who seems to be caught up with a man. However, without resolution in Robert's company affairs, there's little we can do. Even if the executive director gets caught and Emily loses her patron, I worried that she might turn to Robert's bank account next. Actually, afterwards, I stumbled upon her in her room, talking on the phone with someone. It was likely that man she was speaking to.
Your birthday, I'll definitely make you number one. Make sure we have an after party. And remember your promise to marry me.
Hearing her conversation, I panicked internally, feeling urgent to pull her away from that world. As I pondered what to do, the next morning arrived. Unbeknownst to me, Emily had returned home and casually came to the kitchen.
Today's lunch looks delicious. I'm looking forward to lunchtime.
Lately, she has been leaving for work 30 minutes earlier than usual. Apparently, because the project she's working on is nearing completion.
Don't push yourself too hard,
I said, pain in my heart. Despite her seemingly carefree smile, I felt terrible for suspecting such a family-oriented and kind-hearted daughter like her.
Thanks as always. I'll be off then,
she said, oblivious to my turmoil, and left cheerfully for work with her lunchbox. However, I was startled when I glanced at the living room table. She had forgotten her important employee badge.
I must take it to her,
I thought, rushing after her. As I approached a park, I saw Emily with a homeless man who was prostrating himself.
Emily! What on earth is she doing there?
At first glance, one might think a dear daughter is in danger, entangled with a homeless man, but the situation seemed off. The man was tearfully rubbing his head on the ground, reaching out to her as if begging for alms. Emily, on the other hand, was taking out her lunchbox, with a sinister smile, looking down on the man. Not understanding the situation, I decided to watch from the shadows.
Please, I'm begging you. Just the usual. You're disgusting, really vile. Go on, say it like you always do. You want a handout, don't you? Merciful Miss Emily, please bestow your charity on this filthy old man.
The sight of the man crying, shaking, yet unable to live without begging, pained my heart. But even more astonishing were the words coming from Emily's mouth. I had never heard her speak so arrogantly to me, Robert, or anyone else. It was shocking. The entire scene of her speaking those words and making the man do such things was unbelievable.
This is just hilarious. You, existing only as a nuisance, are at least useful for my stress relief. Here's your charity.
In the next moment, I couldn't believe what I was seeing because of what she did. Emily opened her lunchbox and started dropping its contents into an old man's hands.
It's better to recycle this way than to just throw it away in the trash. You get some charity, and I get to dispose of my garbage effectively. Plus, it's a stress reliever for me. 3 birds with 1 stone. It's environmentally friendly.
The words spilling from her mouth were like sharp blades, piercing my heart.
Thanks for always making delicious lunches.
Were all of Emily's kind words just a lie?
I love Barbara's cooking the best.
Were those words just to play with my feelings? I couldn't believe anything about her anymore, and in an instant, hatred welled up inside me.
Listen up, old man. There's this new woman in our house. Well, she's become my mom. Just because I complimented her a bit, she got all excited and started trying hard in cooking. It's so creepy. With her around, Dad's money will decrease, and she's just a nuisance. I wonder if there's a good way to get rid of her.
Seeing Emily's creepy smile, a dark emotion was born inside me. Unforgivable. To think of me and Robert like that. To mock people and treat them that way. I couldn't forgive anything about her. At that moment, I decided to show Emily hell and immediately started taking action. A few days later.
It's rare for Dad and Barbara to have something to talk to me about. Could it be, are you finally going to tell me I'm getting a brother or sister?
She must think we don't know anything. With a nonchalant attitude, Emily spoke those words, and both Robert and I gave her a cold look.
Sorry, but it's not such good news. What's wrong, Dad? You look so serious. Is it about the business?
From Robert's tone and expression, she must have realized that this was no ordinary situation. Sensing the gravity of the situation, Emily let slip what she thought might be the bad news.
Yeah, let's start there.
Actually, in these past few days, we caught the vice president embezzling company funds, and the police acted immediately. The vice president, who had been using online banking to access company money, was arrested and sentenced to 6 years in prison. At that time, the vice president mentioned that he was transferring a large sum of money every month to a certain woman as an allowance. The moment she heard this, a look of disturbance appeared on Emily's face.
Vice presidents can do terrible things, huh? But the person who received the embezzled money might not have known it was illegal. I heard that if you don't know, you can't be held responsible.
Emily was right. If she hadn't known the money was embezzled, she wouldn't be liable for embezzlement. And we had no way to prove that she knew.
True. But it was easy to prove where that embezzled money was spent.
Hearing this, Emily's demeanor suddenly changed. Her eyes narrowed sharply, seeing us as enemies, and she crossed her arms and legs, creating a dominant atmosphere.
We've tracked where the vice president was transferring the money and obtained evidence of where it was spent. It was being sent to your account, Emily.
Even hearing this, she showed no sign of disturbance. She quickly denied it with a snort, laughing off Robert's words and speaking dismissively.
Stop joking. Sure, I had a close relationship with the vice president. But I didn't know it was company money, and there's no evidence to prove it. We do have evidence. It's on the security cameras of the nightclub you frequent.
The moment she heard nightclub, all the color drained from Emily's face. She must have thought it impossible for us to know about that.
We got the police involved in the embezzlement case and asked for cooperation from the nightclub you've been frequenting. They were more than willing to help. Thanks to that, we got some solid evidence. And here it is.
Robert powered up his laptop and showed a shocking video to Emily. She was speechless at what she saw.
Emily, thanks for always being so generous. But you're just an employee, right? Are you sure you can afford to spend so much? I hope I'm not making you stretch your finances.
Not at all.
For my favorite guy, it's worth it. I just have to sleep with some old guy and earn a little extra cash, so don't worry about it. You're selling your body? Well, it's not just for you. The guy's our company's vice president. He's been dipping into the company's funds. And since it's my dad's company, it's basically an allowance from him, right? No problem there. Flirting with the vice president might even help my career. Killing two birds with one stone. Or maybe even more. So don't worry, I'm fine.
Her confession was undeniable proof that she knew about the embezzlement, implicating Emily as an accomplice.
But that was just a joke. And whether that money was actually transferred into my account. Then show us all your bank statements.
Though she tried to remain defiant, it was obvious that this would be the response. Anyone could see that. But Emily was visibly shaken. Robert relentlessly cornered her, leaving her on the edge. She was in a situation with no escape.
It's simple. If you claim you knew nothing about the embezzlement, just prove it. Show us the bank statements for the account where the vice president supposedly transferred the money. If there's no record of those transactions, you'll be cleared.
Seeing Robert's unyielding stance, even towards family, pained me. He values family more than anyone. It must have been incredibly hard for him to say and do these things. Yet, he steeled his heart and confronted Emily. My heart felt like it was tearing apart thinking about his feelings.
Barbara, help me. It's not true. I really didn't know. I had no idea that was the company's money.
Emily, on the verge of tears, ran to my feet and clung to me. She must think I would protect her, persuade Robert, given our past relationship. But I showed her a video saved on my phone.
It's a real nuisance having that woman around. Dad's money will decrease. Is there a good way to get rid of her?
The video showed Emily mocking a homeless man in the park, turning her face pale.
Actually, that day, I noticed you left your employee ID behind. I hurried after you to return it and stumbled upon this scene. After you left, I even talked to this man.
The man had started encountering troubles about a month ago. He told me about seeing Emily throwing away her lunch in the park and speaking to her. His legs were bad, and after being laid off, he ended up homeless, living in this park. He was about to die of hunger when he first met her and had since been keeping her in good spirits to receive lunches.
I couldn't believe it. My own daughter treating someone so terribly.
Moreover, Emily had been physically abusing the man when in a bad mood.
It's not true. I'm not the bad one. It's Dad's fault for making me feel lonely.
Emily, unaccustomed to being scolded, tried to deflect the blame with unbelievable excuses. My anger reached its peak at her words. Enough is enough. I raised my voice suddenly, startling Emily into staggering backward.
Do you have any idea how much Robert has been thinking about you? How hard he's been working for you? He even asked the housekeepers to make sure you weren't lonely without a mother. He knew you were wasting money but tolerated it, thinking it might ease your loneliness. And all this time, you've just been biting the hand that feeds you. Don't you feel the least bit ashamed?
If she were a little child, maybe her reasoning could be understood. But I couldn't forgive her for using it as a shield and refusing to accept responsibility for her actions.
It's time to stop taking adults for granted. Clean up your own mess. No one else will help you.
Hearing my outburst, she seemed to resign herself to her fate. Emily was then taken away by the police. She was sentenced to 3 years in prison for crimes involving stolen goods and harming a homeless man. She also had a debt of several $100,000 at the nightclub, which she'll likely have to repay after her release. Of course, Robert wouldn't cover her debt, and Emily herself intended to work in the nightlife industry after release to pay it off. But she probably couldn't come to terms with it easily. During a visit, she begged Robert, clinging to him and wanting to return home.
I won't ever do something like this again. Please!
Emily pleaded with us, crying. But Robert, hard-hearted, disowned her. At the same time, he declared that the entire inheritance would go to me. That visit was the last time we saw Emily. Life eventually returned to a peaceful state for Robert and me. The company stabilized, and Robert spent significantly more time at home than before.
When I become chairman and have more leisure time, I'd like to travel together. Come to think of it, we never had a honeymoon, did we? I'd love to spend our later years traveling the world with you. We've been so busy. I want to enjoy our remaining years with the person I cherish most.
Sipping coffee made by our housekeeper in the garden, Robert and I spent our time happily together.